evening, everyone. Thank you so much for creating time to attend this session. So we're just going to allow a few people to join, then we'll start at 5:35. Good evening once again, and thank you so much for making time for this session. So we are going to invite the trainer to take us through the recap of the previous session, even as we embark on cost management for this period. So yeah, welcome.
Thanks, Diana. Hope you have the slides I shared, and hope someone can share. We'll get a recap from two volunteers, and also remind participants that there was a test that was shared on email. It takes around 5 minutes to 10 to fill out. Hopefully, those that haven't undertaken the test yet can also undertake. I've seen only 9 participants undertake out of the 40 something. Please undertake that test, and hopefully we can get 2 volunteers to take us through what we went through in the previous sessions. Thanks. Okay. So our agenda is a recap of previous lecture, introduction to project cost management. Then we have understanding project cost management process, then estimating costs, budgeting, controlling costs, tools and techniques for project cost management, and these are specifically digital, risk management in project cost management, and importance of stakeholder engagement, and then best practices in project cost management. Next slide, please. So we are saying that project cost management involves the process of estimating, budgeting, and controlling costs to ensure that the project is completed within the approved budget. So, and this, it's important to know that this runs across the project life cycle and all the other project process groups, as a doctor introduced them to us, and I also looked at them during the project integration process. So the importance is that cost management contributes to project success by ensuring that the projects are completed within a budget constraints, and it also addresses the potential impacts of poor cost management on project outcomes. And this can include some of those impacts can include cost overruns, delays, and stakeholder dissatisfaction. So, as you see, this is a key component of the project management process. Next slide, please. Yes. So, so the overview of project cost management includes estimating costs, and the process. This cost estimation is a process of predicting the cost of resources, activities, and risks associated with a project. It also includes budgeting, which is the development of a comprehensive budget that includes all necessary resources and expenses required to complete the project. Then there's controlling the costs, which is monitoring, tracking, and managing project costs throughout the project life cycle to ensure that they align with the approved budget. Okay. So, like we said, the first step or the first process is estimating costs. So some of the importances of estimating costs is that you are able to establish realistic project budgets and schedules. Then you are able to avoid inaccurate cost estimates that can lead to budget overruns. So budget overruns are when you have a budget, but then the expenditures are exceeding what you plan. And as you know, costs also can lead to project delays. Especially if you didn't budget properly, then you find that you don't have the monies to spend on given activities in your project, and then those activities may delay, or you may even not undertake them. And it also leads to resources shortages if you don't estimate your costs well. So what are some of the techniques that we have for cost estimation? We have the analogous estimating technique, and this relies on historical data from similar projects to establish costs. We also have the parametric estimating technique, which uses statistical relationships to establish costs based on project parameters. We'll be looking at that in detail on the next slide, but we also have another cost estimation technique, which is a part, like I said, which is the program evaluation and review technique. And this one is used to estimate the duration and cost of a project activity by considering the three estimates of optimistic, most likely, and pessimistic scenarios. Then we have also the bottom-up estimating technique, which involves establishing costs from individual project components and aggregating them to create a project cost estimate. And this is what is frequently used in project cost estimation. And you estimate this cost based from the work breakdown structure. Those that attended the integration process and the scope management lecture, you are well familiar with the work breakdown structure and the different formats that are available out there. And I will say that this allows you to decompose project activities up to individual level. So with the bottom-up estimation, you are looking at individual activities, and then you are estimating the costs based on what someone is going to do until you arrive to the cost categories as you are going to be understanding them better. So let's move on to the next slide. So while you're using the parametric cost estimation technique, it has a process that you follow, and the first thing that you do is you define the project scope. And I remember in the scope management, we say that there's a scope definition, and you define the objectives and the deliverables of the project. And this is crucial for understanding project requirements and associated costs. So once you know what you're going to include, what is not going to be included in your project, then you identify the different parameters, which is the next step under the parametric estimation technique. Here you identify the parameters that influence the costs of the project. You can look at things, for example, if you are putting out a product, then you are looking at its size. You're looking at the complexity of the product. You are looking at the locations where you're going to distribute these products. You're looking at materials, labor rates, and technology requirements. So once you have identified those parameters, and these keep on changing depending on the type of project that you you are pursuing. Then you collect historical data, and here you gather data from similar projects that are being implemented out there. You are looking at things to do with work plans. You are looking at the actual budgets out there, and this data serves as a basis for developing the cost estimates, estimating relationships, or the cost models. Then once you have the cost models, depending on the different parameters that you have, then you develop the cost models, and based on the identified parameters and historical data, this can take a form of mathematical equation or algorithm that are related to project characteristics to the cost estimates. So basically, you are looking at the costs in terms of an econometric equation, and you are using that to estimate your costs. Once you've done that, then you calibrate the model. This involves using the historical data to ensure accuracy and reliability by adjusting the parameters and coefficients within the model to reflect variations in project characteristics and cost drivers. So once you've done that, then you validate the models by comparing the estimated cost to the actual cost of the completed projects to assess the accuracy and effectiveness of the model. Then you refine and iterate where need be based on feedback from the validation exercise and additional historical data that you may have got. Then you continuously plan to improve accuracy and reliability of the estimates. Then once you've done that, then you apply the model. You use validated cost models to estimate the costs of the current project. You're looking at the inputs of the project, and you're looking at specific parameters into the model to generate cost estimates for the different project phases or components. And then you review and adjust the costs as needed based on the changes in the project requirements, scope, or assumptions. And it should be key for you to note that these costs depend on the scope of what you're going to do, the requirements that you defined in your work breakdown structure, and the assumptions that you made in your scope statement. So once you've done that, then you document assumptions and the risks associated with the cost estimates. So you need to be transparent about the underlying assumptions because this will help the stakeholders understand the basis for your estimates, and also the underlying risks or uncertainties that are involved with the costs. Then once you've done that, you document the assumptions around each cost. Then you communicate the results to the project stakeholders, and these can be your donors, these can be the project teams. And key to note here is that this communication should really stipulate or clearly communicate the basis of the assumptions and the limitations of estimates to ensure alignment and understanding by all the different stakeholders. So once you've communicated and the stakeholders have understood, mostly this involves sharing a budget with them, then you start monitoring and controlling your costs. And this is done throughout the project's life cycle. And how we do it is you compare the actual costs estimates to the estimated costs and you identify variances and take corrective action as necessary to keep the project within the budget constraints. So basically, that is it about the parametric process, and it is more of a mathematical or an econometric model, and I wouldn't want to go more into details about it, but you can always read about how to develop models, and you can compare these this process with those models, and probably find a way of working with the models. So next slide, please. So the next technique is a three-pointer estimation, or PAT, which is a program evaluation and review technique method. And we didn't handle this during the scheduling because I knew we would handle it here. But it's a technique used to estimate the duration of cost of a project activity by considering three estimates. And the first estimate is an optimistic estimate. And in that equation, you can see the O there. We have also the most likely, which is the most accurate, or what you think is the most accurate cost estimate or duration of the project, and then pessimistic. And here you're looking at worst case scenarios. So with the optimistic estimation, so for us to find the O, what you need to know is O is the best case scenario while you're estimating, be it in terms of the duration of an activity or in terms of cost. For example, if you're planning on implementing a community-based initiative, and you're going to conduct outreaches, and you have a target, for example, you're supposed to conduct, say, 2,000 community outreaches nationwide. And your best case scenario here would be that we can conduct a quarter of those outreaches within the first quarter. So the period there, or the duration would be in a quarter we have around 12 weeks. That would be the best case scenario. But the most likely, or what you think is most accurate, would be that it will take around 4 months for you to conduct a quarter of those outreaches, making it 16 weeks. So your aim would be 16 weeks, and then and the pessimistic, you're saying no. In case we conduct these outreaches, and of course we get challenges getting people on board to how we're going to conduct. The people are going to map out the hotspots that we are going to conduct these outreaches on. And the worst case scenario you have is say is 5 months, making it 20. Is it 20? 20, yes, 20 weeks. So you are able to calculate the duration of the project using such. Now, when it comes to cost, so with the cost, your optimistic estimate would be that okay, within the first quarter, which is 3 months, so we shall use around 20,000 US dollars. But most likely we may spend around 22,000. That is if the period takes on 4 months. And the pessimistic estimate would be that if we take on 5 months, then probably spend around 26 or $27,000. So you're able to use that information to calculate your estimate for that in particular activity. So, like I've said, the most likely estimate, which is M, is the estimate representing the most realistic assessment of the time or the cost under normal conditions. And it considers typical resources, skills level, and conditions expected during the execution of the activity. Then the pessimistic estimate, like I said, is a worst case scenario estimate, and it represents the maximum time or the maximum cost required to complete an activity, assuming everything goes wrong. And this also takes in delays, setbacks, resources shortages, and unexpected obstacles or challenges that may happen. So once you have those 3 estimates, then you are able to determine the part, like the formula shows. So I know someone might have reasons, maybe wondering why we are multiplying the most likely estimate with the 4, and why we are dividing the whole estimate by 6. So the reason why we are multiplying the most likely estimate, which is M, by 4, is to give it a more weighted, weight compared to the optimistic or the pessimistic estimates. So this weighing reflects the assumptions that are most likely estimate is more likely to occur than the extreme optimistic or pessimistic scenarios. This reflects a more balanced consideration for the range of potential outcomes while still accounting for the extremes. The factor 4 provides a more realistic and useful estimate that considers both the average and extreme possibilities. So the reason for dividing the equation by 4 is to normalize the weighted sum and obtain the expected estimate, which is our part within a range that accounts for the variation represented by the 3 estimates, which is optimistic, most likely, and the pessimistic estimates. So by dividing by 6, we ensure that the estimates fall within the range defined by the 3 estimates, reflecting a weighted average that considers probabilities associated with each scenario. And here we have 3 scenarios that we've talked about. We have the first scenario being optimistic, the second scenario being most likely to occur, and then a pessimistic scenario. Next slide, please. So once you've done your cost estimates, then you move on to the budgeting. And budgeting is important for developing a detailed. It's important for us to develop a detailed budget because one, it supports us to allocate our resources efficiently. It outlines the financial resources required for each aspect of the project, and it ensures that funds are available when needed, and that the resources are used effectively to meet our project objectives. So the other importance of budgeting is cost control. as a project manager, you are able to monitor expenditures throughout the project life cycle by referring to the budget. So you compare the actual spending to the budgeted amounts, and you look at the variances that then you're able to identify the variances and take corrective actions to prevent cost overruns. We did look at variance analysis during project integration management, and you can always also try to research around that. Next is risk management. As we've said that once you are making your budget, you are making your estimates, you are making assumptions and identifying the different uncertainties that may happen. So what happens is that you are able to identify potential financial risks and uncertainties associated with the project. So by you having that clarity of the risks and understanding of the budget breakdown, then you can anticipate and mitigate these risks related to funding shortages, because you know what activities you are going to undertake, and you know if the monies are there or not. And if the monies are not there, then you probably have to look at other funding sources, or make changes to your scope and timelines such that you forego some of those activities. And then still you are able to understand the unexpected expenses that may occur, or the changes, like I've said, to the scope and timelines based on the budget. So people who really are in the development or humanitarian sectors know this. Sometimes develop a budget, or you have a budget, and then the budget constraints really can't enable you to undertake some of the activities. So at times you have to either forego the activity or look for budget lines from other activities or projects, and then cater for that activity if it is crucial. Then the next step, the next importance is decision making, and budgets provide essential information for decision making process throughout the project life cycle. Like I said, these decisions really impact the scope and timelines. Sometimes you may have to make changes to the scope of the project because of budget constraints, or at times you may have to make changes to the timelines of the project because of say funds inavailability, and you say let's forego this for now, and once we get the funds we can always undertake this. So budgets help the project managers prioritize activities, evaluate alternatives, and take corrective action based on informed evidence from the financial constraints that they face. So budgets also support transparency with engagement with different stakeholders. As you know, budget management really involves those that are sponsoring you, and the team members and the external partners. So it provides transparency regarding project costs, funding sources, and financial constraints that the project may be facing. And once you are clear with the different stakeholders on the different budget constraints or elements that you are trying to look at, then your stakeholders will really trust you, because they will know that this is what you are working with. I'll give an example. Still, for those that are working with the communities, you have a project they're implementing. You have these community mobilizers, and then they're not aware of the budgets, how they fit in within the budget. So you train these people, and you send them out there to go and do this community work, and at the end of the month they expect some sort of a wage for the services they are provided. And then at the end of the month you're sending them say 20,000 Uganda shillings, and this is someone who has been moving in the community and anticipating, say, 120,000 Uganda shillings. So that person would be really frustrated and demotivated. But once you communicate with them the budget, where they fit in within the budget, then they'll build the trust and say, no, let's work, even if it's little money and the like. So also budgets are used for performance measurement. So the budget serves as a baseline for evaluating project performance by comparing actual spending and progress against the budget amounts and timelines. The project managers can assess the project's financial health, identify areas of concern, and make adjustments to optimize project outcomes. Yes, the performance of if it is in the private sector, then they are looking at profits. If it is in the NGO sector, they are looking at spend against time. Donors provide you with monies, and they anticipate that a given amount should be spent within a given period of time. So you have to balance implementation and also budget expenditures. So if you are overspending and you're overrunning the budget within timelines, then you have to take corrective action and ensure that the spend is optimal as to what you planned. Then compliance and reporting. It ensures compliance with financial regulations, contractual obligations, and organizational policies. So the budget provides necessary documentation for reporting, audits, and compliance checks, which demonstrates accountability and adherence to the established guidelines. So when you look at all these importances of a budget, then you're able to know that this is an essential tool that empowers project managers to effectively manage finances, mitigate risks, and make informed decisions and communications with stakeholders throughout the project's life cycle. The budget is basically a roadmap for financial management, and it contributes to the overall success and sustainability of the project. Next slide, please. So what's involved within this budgeting process? So the budgeting process basically has 5 phases. And the first phase is you identify the cost elements. Once you've identified those, you estimate the costs, and we've talked about cost estimation. Once you've estimated the costs, then you allocate the resources, the different cost elements. Then create the budget baseline and monitor. So within the identification process, you identify the project scope. You clearly define the scope, objectives, and deliverables of the project to understand the work required and associated costs. And members, as you can see, is that that is why at every start of our lecture, I'm always requesting you to give a recap, because with this project management, all the knowledge areas that we have gone through are interlinked. So here we are in budgeting, and we are still talking about scope. When we are talking about the initiation process, we talked about the charter, and we talked about the scope still. We talked about the integration management, and we still talked about scope. We talked about scope management, and we talked about defining the scope statements and objectives and all that, the inclusion and the exclusion criteria. So it's key for us to really understand where we are from and where we are going. So once you've identified the scope, you work with a work breakdown structure. You create a work breakdown structure that decomposes the project into smaller manageable components or tasks, and each component represents a cost element. So remember, we talked about the work breakdown structure, and we said that it is a decomposition of tasks or activities up to the individual level. So we are using this information now at individual level. What is this person going to do? And we are estimating that if this person is going to do this, what do they require? So, for example, hire an IT person. This person will need a computer, will need to work with this sort of technology and all that. So that way you are estimating your costs. So you identify the cost categories. So the cost elements are really at individual level. Then they are categorized into cost categories relevant to the project. And these can be, for example, you might have labor as a cost category. And so within that labor, you are looking at the IT person. And this IT person has to get salary. This IT person has to get benefits. This IT person has to get medical insurance. This IT person and all those other will need to use some will need to incur some administrative costs. So you are budgeting for labor, and you're looking at individual level, and then from each individual level, then you're categorizing that as labor costs. Then you're looking at materials that this person will need. You're looking at equipment. You're looking at overhead costs. You're looking at subcontracting. You're looking at travel, and you're looking at contingencies. Those are some of the cost categories that you can estimate, and it all depends. Different institutions have different cost categories or budget lines, as some institutions call them. So once you've done with the first step, which is identifying the cost elements, and we have said under that you are looking at identifying the project scope. You have identified we have worked with the work breakdown structures, and you have understood the requirements, and you have categorized those costs. You move on to now to estimate the actual costs. You gather information, you collect historical data. This can be industry benchmarks. This can be quotations from suppliers. And you can also have expert judgment to estimate costs for each of the identified cost elements. Remember, cost elements are what feed into the cost categories. So for each of that, for example, if you say you are going to conduct outreaches, and within those outreaches, there are those that are going to be, you have the different types of outreaches that you're going to conduct, then you're budgeting for those. You're looking at previous projects. You're looking at other players, other actors. How much are they spending? You can even use experts. If someone has worked on a similar activity before, they can tell you, no, at this time, if you are to conduct this many, then we need this amount of money, because we need this and this and this and this and that. And that all goes back to the breakdown structure that you had up there. Then you're using the estimation techniques, the ones that we talked about, the bottom-up estimation, analogous, you are looking at parametric, you are looking at part, or the three-pointer estimation techniques to determine the costs accurately. So once you've done that, then you document your assumptions and the constraints underlying the cost estimates to provide a transparency and context for stakeholders. Sometimes there may not be assumptions. In most budgets, you find that these are called budgetary notes, where you have to explain why you included a given figure in your budget. That this will do this, this will cater for this, and the like. So once you've done that, you've identified your scope, you've done the cost estimate, then you allocate the resources. And under allocating resources, you have a resource identification. And this is still done under the work breakdown structure. You identify the human resources, the equipment, materials, and other resources required to complete each task or activity within the project. Then you also have to look at, yes, you've identified them, but are they available? That is the next step under resource identification. You assess whether they are available and the capacity of the resources, considering factors such as skills level, availability, and the different constraints that are associated with a given resource. So once you've known if the resources are available or not, then you have to optimize your allocation to maximize efficiency and minimize the different challenges or bottlenecks that may come up. And you ensure that resources are allocated effectively to meet the project objectives. So while you're allocating these resources, you're allocating them to the different cost categories. And you'll find that in some cases that some donors, for those that are in the NGO world, donor will tell you, no, for me, I don't fund that. So you have to know how to go about that. So you create the budget baseline, and here you compile the cost estimates and document the budget assumptions and review and validate your budget, establish contingencies, and formalize the approvals. So when you're creating your budget baseline, you're compiling now the cost estimates, consolidating the estimated cost for each cost element and resources required to create an initial budget baseline. So once you've done that, you document your assumptions, because you have to have those budgetary notes on each of the item that you include, so that the person reading your budget can clearly understand how the budget was derived. So once that is done, you have to review, and here you have now engaging with the different stakeholders, even the donors, the team members, and sometimes the subject matter experts, to validate and see if your assumptions are accurate, and you gain that buy-in, so that people can able to support your budget, and know that you're not just asking for monies to spend on activities that are not aligned within the project or the organizational goals and objectives. So once you've, of course, reviewed, you're going to have those, risks that you've identified. So you have to allocate a contingency, establish a contingency plan to account for those risks that you have identified that may impact the project costs during execution. Then you formalize your approval. You obtain a formal approval of your budget from relevant stakeholders. And once you have this, then that means that your budget is aligned with the project goals, constraints, and funding requirements. So that's it under creating the budget baseline, which is basically the budget, what we call the budget document. So once you have that, then you monitor and control. And under monitoring and controlling, we are saying that you track actual costs against time. You monitor actual expenditures and resources utilized against the budget baseline or budget throughout the project. And also you look at the schedule to ensure that the spend is within the activities that are they're spending on within what was developed in your schedule. Then if there are any variances, you manage them. You identify and analyze the variances between the planned and actual costs, and investigate the root cause of these variances. If there are any, if you have any deviations. And once you have understood the root cause of these deviations, then you are able to take corrective action so that you keep the budget within its constraints that you planned for. So, and these budget review meetings are really help also to measure performance of the project. Because you will know that you are overspending or you are underspending. You will know that you are making profits if it's your project is profit oriented or not. You will know that the budgets will tell you if you've reached your break-even point, if you are profit oriented or not. And if you are doing that within the stipulated timelines in the schedule. So once that is done, you've analyzed your variances. You keep updating the baseline. Periodically, you review and update the budget baseline for the budget document based on changes in the project scope, requirements, or external factors that may impact the costs. So by following those 5 steps, you can effectively identify cost elements, allocate resources, and establish a budget baseline that serves as a roadmap for financial management and control throughout the project life cycle. Next slide, please. So, what is in a budget? Budgets usually have these items like labor costs, and we said that these are things to do with salaries, wages, benefits, subcontractor costs, and the like. We are looking at equipment costs, and these are costs of renting or purchasing equipment needed for project activities. Then you're looking at overhead costs, and these are costs to do with utilities such as electricity, internet that you're using at the institution. You're looking at water bills and the like. You're looking at administrative costs, things to do with stationery, printing, and the like. And then you're also looking at overhead costs if the institution is renting and the like. So basically, those are some of the elements. And while you are budgeting within the budget budget document, you are looking at these elements, and you are looking at their quantities. You are looking at their how frequent they happen, and you are also looking at the total cost derived for each, and then yeah, you are able to come up with that, and the actual cost per element, and then you indicate the notes or the assumptions around why that is the way it is. So key to note here is that it's important to allocate resources appropriately based on project priorities, critical path activities, and resources availability. Next slide, please. So controlling costs, we looked at annual value management as a technique for measuring project performance and progress in terms of cost and schedule. We've talked about variance analysis. These are some of the techniques that we use to control costs. Variance analysis, and we compare actual project costs against the budget costs and identify the deviation and analyze cost variances to identify trends, risk, and opportunities for improvement. And then we implement a corrective action. This can be revising the budget. You can reallocate resources from one cost category to another, or from one cost element to another. And you can also negotiate with stakeholders. Most of these we went through, and value management we went through, and variance analysis. So we'll move on to the next slide. Next slide, please. Yeah. So tools and techniques. We have some cost management softwares. We have QuickBooks, which is widely used. But there are also other web-based applications. Institutions that can't afford those softwares use Excel templates for costing. Some also use QuickBooks, the offline version, which is much cheaper. So these Excel templates are also used to track and manage project costs for organizations within limited resources. Then some institutions that are really big, they have the integrated systems. They're integrating QuickBooks with other platforms, for example, the procurement platform, and yeah, some have what they call the Lawson accounting system, which is an integrated system that provides seamless project tracking, reporting, and collaboration, both on finances and also on activities. Okay, let's move forward. Next slide, please. So risk management. Risk management in project cost management. Risk management, first of all, is the process of identifying, assessing, prioritizing, and mitigating risks that may impact the achievement of the project. Project objectives or organizational goals. It involves identifying potential risks, analyzing their likelihood of happening and impact, and developing strategies to address or mitigate them. So the process of risk management, before we move to it, we have to understand the key components. And we shall be looking at risk management in detail in the coming lectures. But for now, we'll look at this process where we are identifying the risk. And this is usually from internal processes, external, technical, market conditions, regulatory changes, and environment. So we shall be looking at the risk register and how it works later on in the future. But for now, so the first step is that, and we shall see how this risk identification happens and how it's done. Then once you have identified the risks, you assess your risk. You are able to determine the likelihood of the occurrence of that risk. and its potential impact on the project objectives or project costs. And this helps you to prioritize risk based on its significance and allows for focused attention on the most critical risks. So once you've identified the risk and you have assessed the risk, then you analyze the risk. And this involves analyzing the nature and the characteristics of the identified risk to understand its root cause, what may trigger this risk, and potential consequences. So as our project managers, you are able to gain insights into the dynamics of each risk by analyzing it and making informed decisions regarding what response strategy to use. And with the response strategies, then you start with that. Then you start planning risk response plan, and so based on your assessment and your analysis, you plan. You have to have a response plan, and here you are looking at either developing a strategy to address the risk or mitigate the identified risk. And these strategies are mainly, you either avoid the risk altogether and say, no, we won't go into that. You can transfer the risk to another party. This can be through insurance, or you can even outsource someone to handle that risky part of your project. But sometimes you have to have mitigating strategies, and these are basically controls that you put in place to prevent this risk from happening. I'll give an example. We're working on a project and for adolescents and young women, and basically we're providing post-abortion care services. And we have a region in Uganda. It's called Busoga region, and it has the highest fertility rate. But you find that most of these people that are giving birth are young girls between the ages of 15 to 19 or 20, 24. And so it poses a challenge that most of these girls really get these pregnancies when they haven't intended to become pregnant. So they resort to unsafe abortion practices in the community. And once they initiate the abortions, because the abortion is not legal in Uganda, once they initiate the abortion, then they get these adverse effects that they can't handle in the community, so they have to move to the health facilities. But they were mostly afraid to go to the government facilities, so they opted for private facilities and were providing vouchers to these girls to come and receive post-abortion care services at the facilities. And the risk was that now we had other portfolio of services that were providing, but then we identified the risks that the providers were going for park, and even if a person came in for family planning, the providers would indicate that this person took up park service because it had a higher return when it came back to paying back for the vouchers used. So we identify that as a risk, and we had to have controls in place, which included follow-up calls to these clients to ascertain which type of service they actually received at the health center. So it depends on what sort of a project, what project you're implementing, but you should have these implementation controls measures in place. So the other is if you have accepted the risk with a contingency plan in place, then you monitor the risk and control. So as project managers, you should be able to track identified risks and monitor changes in these risk levels and assess the effectiveness of risk response strategies. And I shall be looking at this more in detail when we come to that learning area, knowledge area of risk management. Then you're supposed to communicate and report. And this is essential for successful risk management. Project managers should communicate risk information to stakeholders, ensuring that all relevant parties are aware of the potential risks, mitigation strategies, and their roles in managing these risks. So then you integrate with the project planning and execution. So risk management should be integrated into all aspects of project planning, execution, and control processes. It is not a standalone activity, but rather an integral part of project management that informs decision making and helps ensure project success. So basically, that is the overview on risk management as a whole. However, the process of risk management in project cost management is a little bit similar, but yeah, let's go to the next slide. So once you have that risk management process in the background, then for costs, this is now specific to cost management. Then you identify the cost risk, and this identification process is really sometimes you're brainstorming to identify the potential risks to the project costs. And then you're reviewing documents from previous projects. You're looking at historical data. You're looking at lessons learned from previous projects and common costs related to these risks. So once you have that, you use the risk register. And these systematically document identify risks and impact on the cost and their probability of occurrence. We shall be looking at that in detail. Then you look at the quantity of the risk. You quantify the risk. So under quantifying the risk, you are looking at cost estimation. Estimating potential impact of the identified risk in terms of project costs. This may involve conducting sensitivity analysis, Monte Carlo simulation, or other quantitative techniques to assess the range of possible cost outcomes. So once you've done that, then still you are quantifying now the risk. You assign probability and impact. You assign probability and impact ratings for each identified risk to prioritize them based on their likelihood of occurrence and potential consequences for the project cost. So once you've done that, you quantify your costs, cost risks, then you analyze the cost risks. And here you are looking at, you're conducting a root cause analysis. you're looking at what is causing or what may be potential cause for this risk, and what are the drivers of the identified cost risk, or what may trigger that risk to understand its underlying factors or assumptions. Then you are still analyzing cost risks through risk interdependencies. And here you're looking at interdependencies between cost risk and other project variables. And here you're looking at cost risks and their impact on the schedule. You're looking at cost risks and their impact on the scope. You're looking at cost risks and the quality and resource availability. Then still when you're analyzing the cost risks, you look at trends and patterns. And this is looking at historical data and looking at project performance indicators to anticipate potential cost risks and trends. And then you develop a risk response strategy. And we said risk response strategies are mainly you either avoid or eliminate high impact costs. You may revise, redesign the project processes, and make changes to the scope, or implementing alternative approaches. So there's also risk mitigation. This could include implementing additional quality controls. Like I said, you can pass the risk on to third parties, like insurance companies. You can also even diversify suppliers. Once you diversify suppliers, it also may is one of those risk mitigation strategies, whereby if you have a single supplier and then still you're able to mitigate that. With diversity comes competition and improved quality. So you may have a contingency plan. You may transfer this risk to other people. Then you may monitor and control continuously for your project in your risk register. Next slide, please. So we have importance of stakeholder engagement in cost management. So here we are looking at communicating cost management strategies to stakeholders. We talked about that, managing stakeholder expectations and building trust through transparency. So while you are doing all this cost management, you should engage the different stakeholders. And that transparency while communicating with stakeholders regarding cost management is key, because it aligns stakeholder objectives with your cost expectations, or your budget with stakeholder expectations and priorities. So once you've engaged with the stakeholders, you're able to gain insights into the different stakeholder needs, their preferences, and concerns related to project costs. Still, the beauty with engaging with stakeholders is able to identify the requirements that are needed, and this informs you on the cost constraints and budget constraints and funding sources, and financial goals. So once you engage with your stakeholders, you're really able to come up with an accurate budget, and you're also able to identify the risks and mitigate them, because the stakeholders will tell you, know, this, and you're able to identify the potential cost risks and vulnerabilities that may arise, and it allows you to proactively manage this risk and mitigate it. And of course, with engagement of stakeholders, you are also able to allocate resources and prioritize them. Of course, different stakeholders have different preferences, and once you align them with the costs of the project, then you are able to come up with proper cost estimations, budget, and cost controls. So with that engagement and transparency, and you are able to know that your stakeholders how they are informed and how they are involved throughout the project life cycle, and that trust is key. That trust and that consensus and managing their expectations is key to also managing your costs. And lastly, once you engage with these stakeholders, they of course provide you with insights that will inform your decision making on costs and cost estimates and cost management. Next slide. Oh, didn't have any. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Our time is fast spent. Please research on how to build trust through transparency. I don't know if you have any questions or comments for me. Then I can stop presenting such that I can see people who have their hands up. Yes. Any questions or comments? For members that have not undertaken the test, I shared it via Google Forms. Please undertake it. It will inform you. It will inform us on your progress. Any questions about cost management? Any comment? Hello? Hello? Okay, if there are no questions or comments, then thanks everyone for attending. Next week we shall be handling project quality management as our next learning area, and we shall be sharing these slides with you in the future at the end of this project management after we've handled all the learning knowledge areas in project management. Thanks very much, and back to you, Diana and Sylvia, for closing remarks.
Okay, thank you so much for the insightful session. I believe that having no questions or comments, I believe that maybe all the members who have joined have understood. and I really appreciate the time you've taken to run us through different areas when it comes to cost management. So, if there are no other questions or if there are no concerns, I'd just like to remind members to remember to fill the registration or the attendance form that is in the comment in the chat section. Remember to fill the attendance form in the chat section, even as we embark on ending this session for this week. So, thank you so much, Goloba, for the training. I appreciate the time you've taken to explain each area, and I hope to see you in the next session. So maybe you can just, for all the members who have joined, you can maybe send claps or appreciation to the trainer for a good job he has done for today as you fill in the attendance register. Thank you so much, guys. So the attendance register is in the chat section. Just find some time to fill it before you exit. Once I can see there's a hand that has been raised by Jacob Ofula. Jacob, you can just unmute yourself and speak.
Actually, the hand was from Wawire. Wawire, any question? Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, so if there are no, okay, Namehe, do you have any questions or concern? You can just unmute.
Sorry, my question has come in late. It goes to Mr. Golova. Thank you so much for the presentation. Well understood. Though my question is, what really happens and which image does it give to probably funds allocated to implement activities, but then at the end, the monies are
Sorry.
underspent? What image
Sorry.
does it give to the donor? Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Okay.
Okay, my question is, what happens when funds are allocated to implement certain activities, and which image is given to the donor when the monies are underspent?
Well, underspending means that one is that your cost estimation wasn't done properly, and the other is that the different donors see it in different different perspective, but most donors would think that, of course, one, the time, the scheduling wasn't done properly, and two, the scope of the activities wasn't comprehensive, meaning that you missed out on some issues. And usually some donors will say, no, let me give you a no-cost extension such that you are able to implement and spend all the monies, while others will tell you bank back the money. And the truth is, I've worked in a grant-making organization, and that wouldn't, it's not pretty. The way they see it is that you don't have the capacity, and it does affect your image as an institution at the end of it all. It does affect the your institution, and you may apply for a grant from such such donors, and they may not want to work with you. But others may just, of course, it depends on the donor. But others may just tell you to extend the project timeline. So basically, it shows incompetencies, one in scope management, two in schedule management, and also in establishing or estimating your costs as an institution, meaning that you didn't properly estimate your costs. I don't know if that has answered your question.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much.
All right, is there anyone maybe with a burning question or a concern? You're free to ask your questions before we call it an evening.
Any question? Any question? Okay, if there are no questions, see you guys next week. I will be handling project quality management. Those that haven't filled out the test, please do. Please, I had only 7 responses uh, out of the 40 something. Please do. It takes around 5 to 10 minutes to fill out that. See you next week. Bye bye.
All right, thank you so much. And I wish you all the best, and I wish you a great week ahead. Remember to fill the attendance before you leave. So I'd like to consider this session. Uh, Consider that this session has come to an end until next week. Thank you so much for joining us, and see you in the next training.